Galinsky's paper.
the Galinsky piece, or at least the Galinsky chapter. Victor, who I think was most responsible for getting the NRC interested in this, figures the real numbers probably 3 times that, and that the duration could have been quite much longer.
Yeah.
And so, one of the fun things about this history is its elasticity and uncertainty itself. If it was cold certain what the number was and what the duration was, it wouldn't be half as much fun to read about.
Did the whole Israeli arsenal, is the entire arsenal built on this?
No.
on these
No,
diverted
not the whole
materials?
arsenal.
If you're talking about 337 is the number he comes up, kilograms.
Maybe a dozen HE bombs, or something, maybe 20 of those, something.
Oh,
I don't know.
well,
But it depends on what kind of design, bomb
Design, excuse me.
Yeah, that's
matters.
another, that's another
But
thing.
more
we're
important,
working
it
on.
may not have gone to bombs.
Yes.
It could have been something worse. Thank you.
Ah, now I noticed.
Okay.
Yes.
It could have been used to increase the power output
Right.
Of,
The plutonium production reactor, right.
so that,
Right.
you know, a lot of different ways you can use this. And so, don't know. Point is that efforts to lift these skirts were very unsuccessful and frustrating for a lot of employees. And the whole treatment of the Israeli program after the Kennedy and arguably the beginning of the Johnson period went in a very different direction once people thought or were convinced that, well, they had. And it's instructive and tells us a lot about how we handle the Indian cases, both in the 70s and more recently. And it tells you a lot about how we may end up treating the Iranian case closer in. It's not great. By the way, I wish you the best of luck with your humanitarian group. I have been working only with 3 countries, and I can tell you, I bet you mine trumps all 146 of yours. They're Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese. And the good news is there's no way a war can possibly start, and none of them are going to get nuclear weapons. But if you ask them, what would make you consider getting more or getting some, the list is incredibly detailed. Heads up.
It's another project we're working on together, so.
By the way, you don't need a large number to tip the cow with regard to people thinking differently about these things. You know, things are not shaping up as well as they need to. Like, I used to be more of an optimist in the 90s. Things have not gone so well since that decade.
Which country in the world would you say has the poorest nuclear security, and what do you think of Turkey's decision to begin constructing its first nuclear reactor at Baku?
First nuclear security. Wow.
Doesn't NTIA have some kind of like
Index, the
Yeah.
scorecard.
The index?
Yes.
I think
the
it's
scorecard.
India or something.
Maybe Pakistan, but.
Well, no, but it may be India.
Right, that would be
Pakistan.
ironic.
See, my guess is Pakistan is probably better than some of the others.
Yeah.
Because they keep getting in the news.
Depends where you start.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, with Turkey, I don't know too much about the current project, but I actually visited with the chairman of the Turkish Atomic Energy Commission, I don't know, about 5 years ago when I was working at the Council on Foreign Relations. Had tea with him and his staff, and they had this huge building. I mean, you've seen the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's buildings, I showed you what they're, and it's almost as big. And Turkey doesn't have any nuclear power plants. Yeah, some research grant facilities. And so
There's hope.
There's
It's that
hope.
big.
They have
It
these,
will never succeed.
It's exactly. That's the point, right? They have these grand schemes. So, I'll, when they start breaking ground, then I might actually believe that they're going to build it. But
I think that's not my take.
what
You
do
should be
think?
worried.
Do you think that they're serious this way? Yeah.
I think they were thinking a lot more about things other than boiling water.
Mhm.
You know, back in the early 80s, in fact, this was released, they had got caught out doing academic studies on how to use LWRs to make weapons material. And of course, you know, invariably, if you find someone who really knows a great deal about nuclear proliferation, because they tell you they do, i.e. they're academics and they've got tenure, they will tell you that, of course, you can't use an LWR to make bombs. The unfortunate truth is that you can. And the Turkish academic study demonstrated this. Shortly thereafter, and not related, believe me, the Reagan administration toyed with buying one to make plutonium and tritium from the Washington Power Supply System. So that was the Department of Energy. I assume they know whether or not it works or not, you know. So my point would be the Turks have thought about this before. I think as they look at Iran, they're thinking about it. And a lot of this has to do with their sense of their position as the legacy country of the Ottoman Empire, just as the Iranians think of themselves as the holders of the Persian torch. And I think it would be a mistake, given how much natural gas is piped in and out of that area, to think that the economics of nuclear power is a no-brainer. It takes a little bit of cogitation to figure out why you would build a lot of it right now there. But if you're concerned about Iran, you might. By the way, this prejudice is shared by the former ambassador to Turkey, Eric Abel. So there are, I always say, if two people believe something, it's a campaign. Heads up. I think you got to watch it. Wait, I guess we were waiting for the congressman. By the way, is he?
We're
what,
exactly on time.
Are we?
I know,
To
we
the-
are,
to the
5
minute.
o'clock.
It's tempting.
He
What do
said
you-
he would come back. but
Yeah, I don't want to
we'll see.
disappoint our sponsor, our
That's
hopes.
another
More
20
questions?
minutes or
I was
so.
just
I've got
gonna-
another question.
Okay.
All right, Mark.
For Mr. or Dr. Sapolsky.
I am not a doctor. I am an
Definitely wanna leave
ABD
it off.
in all the
You're
dissertations.
JD, right? No?
I'm Esquire.
Oh, Esquire, there you go.
You talked about, you know, some of your recommendations, so,
Yeah.
but I only got 2 of them. One of them was that reprocessing should stop, and the other one was, you know, say no to MOX. But I'm sure you have other.
Well, as I said,
Accountancy with Russia,
Accountancy.
especially,
make sure
we're
that,
doing
that we're at least sharing our best practices. That seems harmless.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, you can send that in an email one way. You don't even have to have good relations. And it might not even take temporary duty orders. Just send it and see if they have any questions. If they don't get back, then you might wonder. You can do that with a number of countries. I assume we're doing it. I don't know if we are. But no, the big one for Congress is the question that drives both industry and their critics into mild forms of dispute, and that is, should there be a stated standard for nuclear cooperation? The gold standard is this idea that was embodied and made manifest in the United Arab Emirates and the Taiwan Agreement that says you will forswear making enriched uranium, heavy water reactors, and separating or recycling plutonium fuels. Now, industry does not like this. It has opposed it, and it argues that, well, you got to be in the trade to control it, and that what we need to do is have just a lot of, U.S. agreements. The problem with that is right now, I'd say in the fuel market, the U.S. exports constitute 10% of the world's market. So the idea that we're going to take over through sales is beyond optimism. I think it's, not credible. I do think, though, that American leadership can lean on the remaining suppliers, but then that would require us to have a standard. This administration, perhaps in all fairness, no, I won't be fair, actually worsened the previous one. How about it? Doesn't like having a standard. They badmouth it. By the way, I had a letter that I you know, to try to support the standard. And I had much less problem getting Republicans to sign it than Democrats. Very interesting. Because they see that the standard was initiated by Bush. Now, I always say when you're out of power, your job is to be principled, and when you're in, you know, something happens. But still, there's a problem there because the administration makes so much hay out of being, you know, better than thou on this. Well, not so much here. So that legislation or some version of it would be something to focus on, because then once you said that, look, there should be a presumption that you try to get this, and if you don't, okay, we still may approve the deal, but we'll have to vote. Which, well, they hate the idea of voting. Democracy and nuclear power, they say, may not mix. But, you know, I'm here to tell you it ought to, just like the other topics. And if you had that, you could then lean on Japan, Korea. And they say, oh, well, what about China? Well, it turns out Westinghouse sold all the patents. It's part of its model to the Chinese. Why? Well, part of the model is once you get them to buy a handful and you give them the patents, then you help them export. We did this with Framatome. That's now Areva. Japan, Korea. Right. Well, you know, we have a little bit of a say there, don't we, still? And then with Russia, I have a very insidious idea of leverage. What if you were to actually announce through the NRC what the safety quality of their product line was? The idea that we don't have a say and we don't have leverage because we haven't sold everyone all of their fuel strikes me as very small-minded. I think we have some leverage if we choose to use it, but you gotta have a standard. So that would be one of the suggestions. The other I mentioned is the US and other countries, and as well as the IAEA, and the IAEA does it, but privately, need to assess whether or not the IAEA can meet its own timeliness detection rules. These are written up in the US, in the IAEA glossary. They are public domain. They have numbers. Can they meet them? Then the question would be, are those goals tough enough? You need to do this examination once every 24 months. I believe the House Foreign Affairs Committee put this commission recommendation, I know because I was on the commission and put it in
Right.
the commission recommendations, and they humored me and agreed to it, was actually passed by the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Of course, it was the Foreign Relations Authorization Act, which I believe has never been passed in, I don't know, at least a couple of weeks. But you need to get someone in our government and other governments to do that on a routine basis. And maybe even make it public to some extent. I think it would be very helpful. So those are your four.
Thank you.
I just heard from a congressman. He is unfortunately stuck upstairs voting. Crazy, I know.
Okay.
But he said, thank you
Okay.
to our presenters and to our attendees. Thank you so much for coming. This was a really important, helpful discussion.
Well,
We appreciate your time.
we want to thank both congressmen for hosting this and the staffs as well. And we really appreciate it, actually.
Well, and we'll get you all out for another round, hopefully this year.
This is what we're built for. Okay, bye-bye.